What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, along with my co-hosts Glenn Martin and DK, of course, in the background. And here, if you can't tell by the title, we are talking about a hot topic around the water cooler at anywhere you work, and that is Greg Roman being brought up in the conversation. There being interest from Stanford University in Greg Roman as their new head football coach. So we're going to get into that, what that means for Greg, what that means for Stanford, what it means mainly for the Ravens, which is what we're here to talk about. But before we do, take a second, hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date with all your Ravens news, and of course, turn your notifications, leave your comments below, and give us a like if you're enjoying the content. But Glenn, tell us a little bit about what's going on. And then, we can share some stuff about Greg and really what it means for the Ravens, whether or not we think he gets the job. So kind of fill us in on the context of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the head coach for Stanford University, David Shaw, has been there for quite a long time now after he took over when Jim Harbaugh was moving on from Stanford to the San Francisco 49ers. Let's see. He took over in 2010. 2011. I'm sorry. So he was on in 2010 as a offensive coordinator and running backs coach under Harbaugh, and then took over as head coach from 2011 to now. He's announced he's stepping away from football, thus opening up the position of head coach at Stanford. And also on the same coaching staff with him back when he was the Stanford offensive coordinator, wide receiver / running back coach, was the Ravens' current offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, who at the time was, a tight end coach. I'm not exactly sure what his other title was at the time, but he was on the staff from 2009 to 10. And then it looks like he then moved on and joined Jim at the 49ers and took over. And we all know kind of what happened there. He took Colin Kaepernick and that offense to the Super Bowl, to multiple NFC championships, then goes to Buffalo, and then ultimately ends up here in Baltimore. Well, it seems like the Stanford University has reached out to Greg Roman and the Baltimore Ravens to at least set up some preliminary talks about that head coaching vacancy. Certainly nothing set in stone, but John Harbaugh did confirm that Stanford has reached out to talk to Greg Roman. Greg Roman confirmed it, but also quickly moved it right back to focusing on what's happening here and now. But
not without a smile.
Yeah, exactly. With a little smirk. So when I hear that, of course, the timing is incredible, Jimbo, because if this was happened 2 weeks ago when the Ravens were riding a 4-game win streak and everything was looking great, that might be one thing. But the news breaks on the heels of another disappointing loss when they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars after having a 9-point fourth quarter lead. Red zone issues plagued them all afternoon. And so I just think the timing is incredible when they bring this up, because I think a week ago the reaction might have been different. But it just seems like, Jimbo, everyone's happy to hear that there's interest in Greg Roman.
Yeah, it does. And I think it could be one of those situations where it's mutually beneficial. They say people break up. It's never mutual.
Yeah.
But maybe this scenario, maybe there's some truth to that statement. Maybe not. Maybe it's really just the Ravens. But either way, like you said, Greg has a resume. He's been there before. He knows the program. Obviously, he's done well in the NFL for himself. Say whatever you want about Greg Roman, but if you want to isolate his offenses, he's, like you said, he's been successful in the Niners, been successful in Buffalo, and obviously been successful here. So the thing I really want to talk about is what it means for the Ravens moving forward if he gets the job. And then just really quickly, whether or not he gets the job. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Greg gets the job. I don't think Greg gets the job because I don't know how great of a recruiter he can be. He doesn't seem – the Harbaughs are excellent recruiters. And that is such an important piece of the collegiate level that, look, you saw what happened with Oklahoma, and now look, the coach goes to USC, and all of a sudden they're in the college football playoff hunt, right?
Well, right now they're in it.
Right, exactly. And so you see how much a head coach can swing things. I don't know how much Greg Roman can walk into someone's house, right, and say, hey, mom, and really do a good job at that part of it. which I think is honestly job number one, my opinion. That and then staffing your team. But being a leader of men, I think, is so crucial in recruiting those young guys. So I don't think Greg gets the job, just my opinion. But we'll act on the assumption that he does.
Well, hold on.
Of Ravens fans.
Okay, yeah. And before you say that, before you get there, and I'll let you get there, I think he's a slam dunk. And here's why. You talk about recruiting, Jimbo. Let me ask you this. When John Shire, I believe is his name, took over for Coach K in Duke.
Yeah.
When he goes into the living room, he's no Coach K, but he's still got Duke written across his shirt, and Duke sells itself at this point. Does Stanford not sell itself when you how does it not? I mean, even if you said, look, you come here, there's only what % of college players go on to make it in the pros? And then the average pro career is what, 3 years at best. That's the average. So what would you rather have on your resume? I mean, when you can tell a family, parents and all that, and you can say, look, your kid's going to have a Stanford education. That gets you into so many doors. I think that the school alone, even if you're not the greatest recruiter, I mean, if you have effort and you have Stanford on your chest, I think it almost sells itself.
Yeah, no, I think there's a fine line, though, between athletes and families, athletes that actually care about academics, and athletes and families of athletes that see the NFL as their only course, right?
You don't go to Stanford then.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you dip your pool in both sides of that? Dip your finger in or your toe in the pool of both sides of that. You see what I'm saying? Well, like, because there's only so many Andrew Lucks or Richard Shermans or, you know what I mean? There's only Christian McCaffrey. There's only so many of these guys out there. And so you need to be able to play in both realms. I think if Greg's going to go recruit, the pitch, if I'm Greg, is forget that it's Stanford. That's secondary. First, you see what I did in the NFL? If you're an offensive player, look, you want to be good in the offense in the NFL? I'm one of the best in the NFL at offense. Second to that, you're also going to Stanford, where if this thing doesn't work out, you still got Stanford in your resume. But I think my first pitch is that, like, dude, I've been there where you want to go. You know what I mean? Like that needs to be mine.
On his resume is the greatest run game in the history of the NFL.
Right. Imagine the stall of backs he would have. And offensive linemen.
And tight ends. And look,
I mean,
on my resume, I got
all pro.
Well, I got all pro tight end. I got MVP first unanimous MVP quarterback on my resume as an OC.
Yeah.
I mean, you at least bring it up, whether you want to give the credence or to him, you want to give the credit to him or to Lamar. I think they certainly each deserve a piece of that credit pie.
Yeah, I just don't know if he has the charisma. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's the question. Does he? Is he a great leader of men? And when you're the head coach, it's more than you got to be a leader to be an OC. You got to be a leader to even be a position coach because you're leading a group, but. To be the head coach, you have to be able to set up culture. You have to set a culture for an entire program.
Yeah.
That we're not sure if he has it. And also, he's had interviews in the past and not gotten jobs. So I wonder if he's not a great interviewer.
Right.
Which could stand this way.
Now, with all that said, like I said, we'll act on the assumption that he gets the job. Because if not, the Ravens fans might start fainting, having, coronary events and things like that. Right. So we're going to act as if the Ravens or the Greg Roman is no longer OC of the Baltimore Ravens because he gets a job at Stanford. What does it mean for the Ravens, Glenn?
Yeah, that's the question, because they're going to be left with a hole in their coaching staff that say what you want about Greg Roman, but if you just look at the numbers, it's some pretty big shoes to fill. It's a guy who's had the #1 offense in the league in his tenure, in his short tenure here. He's had MVP. He's had, multiple Pro Bowlers all around the offensive line outside of the receiver position, of course. But he's got some big shoes to fill. I'd say this. I think Greg Roman was perfect for the job at the time. I think he'll be perfect because you talk about a guy, if you can't out-recruit those in your conference of talent, then you better be very unique in how you play. And I think Greg Roman, if nothing else, is certainly unique in how he schemes and plays. And now if he has the opportunity to build, to not only just, kind of take the ingredients and make a meal, he'll be able to buy the groceries, as they say. He'll be able to make the team exactly how he wants. He'll have full autonomy when it comes to, who's recruited and all that. So I think, so he was perfect for the job at the time. But I think now it's time for a more you know, it's time for an air attack that's a little bit more advanced than what we've seen here under Greg Roman.
Is
right
it Mark
now,
Jackson, the Steve Kerr type thing?
It could be. I hope it's instant success like we've seen in that. I don't know if they'll get a guy. Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, you got such a great offensive staff as far as your players. Like, you got a great offensive line, great tight ends. You got Lamar Jackson as quarterback. You got a deep running back room. You need some help at receiver, but you'll be getting that in theory once he takes over, because Bateman will be back, and you'll also have a whole year to recruit. I think Greg Roman spends so much time getting the most intricate run game in the league, and really in league history, that it's understandable that he's not going to even come close to having the most intricate passing scheme, because you only have so much time. And when you spend so much time on the run game, unfortunately, your passing game is going to be, as they say, more elementary. But I think that, like Greg says, when you have a dominant run game, it opens up massive windows in the passing game. So you don't have to be as intricate, because they play together. But I think now is the time where they say, all right, we're going to take some of what Greg is brought to our franchise. We're going to take and keep some of that great stuff he's got, but he's not the guy to expand the passing game. He's just that's not his specialty. So we got to get a guy who's okay with because I think John still wants to have that run first. This is still our blueprint here. So I don't think he wants to totally go from one end of the spectrum to the other end. He wants to just get a little more towards the middle of things.
Well, this is the only thing I'm going to say about the Ravens. I'm going to use some Latin on you guys. Caveat emptor, right? Like, seller beware, seller beware.
You just Googled that.
No, I did not. I promise. I paid enough money for college and went to business school that I better know that, right?
All right,
this is crazy.
All right.
So
grass isn't greener. Is that what you're saying?
Just keep that in the back of your mind. I think whether it's the Ravens want Greg to be gone behind closed doors, whether it's Greg wants to be at Stanford, I don't know yet. But what I do know is that being anxious to just push a guy out for the sake of change, I'm bored of this, I'm frustrated by the same things, it's happening over and over again. All I'm saying is that it's you need to be really careful, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It just simply isn't. I'm not saying don't make a change. Like, I'm not in that camp either. But make sure you got someone in your back pocket that, because it, Glenn, in 2 weeks, imagine we start the season next year 0-2 and the offense looks like the Denver Broncos. Then what are they going to be saying? Greg, right? Like,
yep.
I mean, so all I'm saying is beware. I think it's going to be really interesting. Right? I think it'll be, that's right. I think it'll be exciting times for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
To see like the change
for Lamar, for any of the long-term players, especially Mark Andrews,
right?
All those guys.
And this is this is all speculation, folks. This is all speculation. But if there's frustrations from Lamar because we've heard people get speculative about like how he feels he's being held back and this, that, and the other, whatever, right? If that is the case, what's going to happen if he starts playing worse under another OC?
Well, then there won't be at least one excuse. The Greg Roman excuse won't be
gone,
there.
Out the door.
No, I mean, I think you're right. You never know what you're going to get. What I would say about that is that you said it on this show, Jimbo, yourself. Steve Bisciotti's made a life and a career out of good hires. That's what he does. He hires good people.
Yeah, and John does too. For the most part, I think John's one of the best. His staff is excellent.
So if tasked with the job of finding a new OC, I have confidence that they have the guys to do it and find that guy. And I think I don't know if that guy's on the staff. I think that maybe some criticism needs to be directed towards some of the new younger coaches that were brought in for this exact purpose to help the passing game, to help grow and develop these young pass catchers. And yet all we're hearing is criticism of that group. So maybe T. Martin and Keith Williams deserve a little bit more criticism than they're getting right now, because it seems like everyone's hanging the blame on the neck of Greg Roman, and maybe that's not the fairest thing.
Right, he's got broad shoulders.
He does got broad shoulders. Dude does not miss chest or shoulder day. There's no doubt about it in the weight room. But yeah, I mean, I think it's time for I think this would be a classic win-win. I think Stanford would be benefited. I think the Ravens would be benefited. I think Greg Roman would be benefited. I mean, look, Stanford's 3-9 this year. Like,
he's going to get a nice pay raise too.
Nice pay raise. He'll be the king on campus at Stanford.
He gets to live in Northern California. No complaints there.
It's a win-win for everyone. I think it's time. I think he gets the job, and that little smirk is really what kind of
gave it away for you.
Yeah, gave it away that at least he really wants it. I think he really, really wants it. I only worry anytime we've seen players in the past, or coaches, I should say, in the past, like either ones that are on their way to the Super Bowl, but they already have announced that he's the head coach now of the Giants. It doesn't seem to tend to like go well usually in that next game. Like they're already starting to look at the roster of their next team, and their game planning can be distracted.
Human nature. How can you not?
Of course, yeah, because especially with recruiting. Like you talked about it, you got to get a head start. Every moment in recruiting could be you losing a 5 or 4-star guy to your opponent, to your direct opponent.
Yeah, Coach Whittingham's out there right now hitting the pavement. You better believe it. Any minute he's got out there. Coach Witt sits in your living room. You sit down and listen.
There you go. So it's like, man, I worry what effect this could have on the Ravens for the rest of the season, because I still think everything's in front of them and they can accomplish any goal they set.
Yeah, well, let's hope it works out for Greg, for the Stanford. But more than anything, let's be selfish here because we're Ravens fans. Let's hope it works out for the Baltimore Ravens. Whatever it is, let's hope for the best for the team and secondarily the best for those guys. But let us know what you think. Does Greg get the job? Is it good for the Ravens? Do you have any concerns about him moving on and there being a new offense brought in and a whole change of regime and system offensively? Let us know all your thoughts below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you. See you.